Welcome to Tara's Voice, where we talk to interesting people and have irrelevant conversations. Each episode, we spin the wheel of unpredictable questions with fascinating guests, and we dive deep into unscripted, real life conversations. It's all about laughter, honesty, authenticity, and having a great time. Why? Because life is worth laughing at.
Well, welcome. Today, I am so excited to be one of my absolute favorite people for you guys to meet, Cory Michelle. And let me tell you just real brief about her. If you have not seen her, maybe you've been living under a rock and you don't know who she is. She is a dream life advisor. She is a best-selling author and speaker, but she really helps women bring their biggest dreams alive through alignment, intuition, and this is huge, self-trust. Cory's created a global program. It's called the Identity Makeover, where women get to authentically become who they were meant to be. And I will just tell you on a very personal level, she is probably one of the people who has had the biggest and most significant impact on my life and my daughter's life. Literally, I have said many times, she saved my daughter's life. So I am so excited for you guys to get to be in her space and hear from her. I have no idea what question we're going to have today, but I will pull up our wheel of irrelevant questions. Usually we're talking business, but that's not what we're going to do today. We were just talking about giant spiders because she lives in Australia. And so we'll see where the conversation goes if it circles back to giant spiders. So let me go ahead and pull up our wheel. And are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. We're spinning. We'll see. Some of these questions were given by other people. Some are ones that I came up with. So we'll see which one it is. And the question that came up. Now, this is from Yvonne McHugh. And she says, something you remember in your childhood that had the greatest impact. So, what is something that you remember from your childhood that had the greatest impact on you? That's interesting.
Oh, yeah, there's so many things I think had a big impact on me.
Is there
Do you want
anything
me
that
just to go
stands out?
dive in? Yeah, the
Yeah.
first one that popped in my mind, we always got to go with that one, is um, when I think I was 15 and I was playing softball, and I was really good. Like I was playing competitive softball. I was like on the starting teams in my summer leagues and stuff like that. And when I got into high school, I had this coach, and he was like, "Oh, you're good. You're going to be on varsity. You're going to be on varsity." And I was thinking, "Okay, when am I going to get on varsity?" So nothing was happening, and my friends on the team were moving up to varsity team, and I was like, "Wait a second, like why am I not moving up?" So I went to the head coach and I went, "Hey, why am I not on varsity yet?" I'm 15 years old. And he said something that was so impactful. He said, straight up, "You're too cocky." Like,
That's why they didn't put you on varsity. So it had nothing to do with your skill. It was just you had an attitude.
I had an attitude because I knew I was good, but I was also being like pumped up by the assistant coach, right? So, of course, I was confident. And I was like, all right. And I worked my butt off to prove to him that I deserved to be on varsity. And then I made it like 2 weeks later. So it was inevitable. The truth I found out later was that they had somebody else in the position that they wanted to put me in. So they didn't really have a spot for me. But for him to say that to me, I went, "You're not gonna tell me I can't have what I want."
Wow. And what a
So
foretelling for what you teach. For those of you who don't know, that's kind of what you teach, right? That you can have what you want in life and that we don't need to
yeah,
settle for not having what it is that we want. So that's so interesting how that aligns with who you
yeah,
became.
yeah. It's
You
like
know what's interesting though is I wonder if you were a boy, if he would have said the same thing to you.
maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. Yeah, only because I did one of the episodes where I talked with somebody and the question that came up was how would your life be different if you were born in the different gender? And one of the
Mm,
things that we talked about is that is one of the significant differences is for men is just confidence. That men just seem to have a higher level of confidence, right? And so in women that confidence was actually seen as like a negative thing, as cocky. Now, maybe it would have been the same thing had you been a boy and he was really disruptive and they were like, okay, he's too cocky. He can't take direction, but
Yeah.
that's so interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you might be right about that actually, like, it probably would have been or quite possibly could have been received as confidence instead of this, like, bad thing called cocky, like, I don't understand how I could have been any different, right,
yeah.
with my level of confidence and what I was the evidence of what I was doing, right, because I had a good batting average, I was good at the position I was playing, like, I was all of that, and I was ready to step into that as well and have that position, like, I was claiming it. So, yeah, I would that would have been interesting. I never thought about that.
Or just say to you, there's no position open for you, right? Like, why turn it into a negative thing? If the truth is really that there wasn't a position for you, then why not
Mhm.
just tell you the truth about that? That's so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So, any other things? So, and the reason my head is spinning on this is I read a book and I cannot remember what it was, but it had to do with the psychology of who we become.
Mhm.
And it talked about how your three earliest memories, like the first memories that you can actually really remember, have such a defining impact in who you are as an adult because they
Mhm.
shape the way that you see the world. And the psychologist, his idea was that if this is something you remember out of all the memories you can remember as a little kid, it was because they had significant impact in how you were forming in your brain and everything. So this question reminds me of that, right? Like, what are the
Mhm.
things that significantly impacted you? Like, can you remember your earliest memory?
Ooh, I don't have a lot of early memories, like, when I was super young. I do gosh, I do remember one that very much formed a lot of what happened after that, which was, well, I don't know if you had this happen. I went from like a super skinny kid to growing, I think a little bit earlier than other people. And then I got a bunch of that like teenage uh, fluff. And my mom one day, I was sitting sort of Indian style, like bent over, and she's like, "Ooh, what's that?" And then she poked my stomach. Yeah,
Oh,
and I still think about that to this day, that created
wow.
so much awareness about what was wrong with me or what in that moment I thought, "Oh, no, what's wrong?" Right? And, so many body issues and self-image, self-concept issues, I think sort of got activated from that one little
So I'm
moment.
curious, was she like a mother who was always dieting and stuff like that? Was that
Yeah,
her kind of thing?
yeah.
Okay. That was initially what I thought.
Yeah, and I don't think she meant any harm by it. She was just I think what she was doing was noticing the changes in my body at, like, 10 years old and going, "Oh, what's that?" And she didn't have really a filter.
Wow. Well, that's interesting because I've heard this as, the mother of a daughter that I think it's something like not by the time they're 9 years old, there's like a high percentage of young girls that have been on a diet at 9.
Mhm.
And we think like, well, where are they getting these body images from? And it's a lot the mothers, right? And I don't think it's done necessarily on purpose, but how many times, we stand in front of a mirror and go, "Oh, I don't look good," or, "Oh, don't take my picture, I don't have any makeup on yet," or, "Oh, I can't eat that, I have to watch that." And that when these young girls are watching their mothers struggle with their weight, right or wrong, right? Like it could be somebody who really is struggling, she's trying to lose weight, that kind of thing. They're picking up all of that and internalizing it, and how it's really important as a parent to kind of say, it's okay to take my picture without makeup on, or, I feel comfortable in my own skin. Cause, well, I talk a lot about you're the mirror for your children. You're the
Mhm.
mirror for how they're going to view life.
Yeah.
And so that's why initially when you said that, I thought, oh, I bet your mom had a lot of body issues. That
I
was
think
my first thought.
I think that's exactly accurate because, like, even the work I do, we're looking at, okay, what happened when you were a kid that created this pattern, right? And like my mom's pattern was, I think I was like 26 or 28, and I was thinking about this, processing this sort of stuff for myself, right? Of like, where did all these body issues come from? Why am I constantly on a diet? Why am I yo-yoing? Why am I never so happy with my body? Right? And I saw pictures of my mom when I was probably about that age, and I was like, "She was so thin." But she always talked about how she didn't like her body. And I went
Wow.
because I was looking at pictures when I was younger, and I went, "I was so thin. Why was I never happy with my body?" So that conditioning happens very unconsciously in the background, like people talking not even talking to the child, but who you're being, and that sort of, consciousness that is around gets implanted as normal. That's just what we do.
Well, and you talk a lot about this. So for you guys who don't know, the work that you do, Corey, is very much about getting into alignment, the energy, kind of quantum physics of what you're attracting into your space, manifestation, things like that. Which it's kind of woo because some people think this is all woo woo. I guess for me, I really love the science behind it. Like one of my favorite books is Biology of Belief. It was a science book about how we internalize and what we hold. And there's a great book like The Body Keeps Score, how your body holds on to things. Um, but when you think about all the stuff that you pick up and how you view the world and how much of it happens at such a young age that you're not even aware of, um, when I thought about two of my earliest when I was doing that, what are your 3 earliest childhood memories? One was I couldn't have even been I don't even think I was in kindergarten yet. And I remember coming home hysterically crying because the kids in the neighborhood did not believe that I was Wonder Woman because I was Wonder Woman. And they told me I wasn't, and just being hysterical to my mom that no one believed me because I was utterly convinced I was Wonder Woman. I still go like my girl crush is like Gal Gadot. I'm like, I want to go see Wonder Woman. Oh my gosh, right? But then I have another memory. My dad had a lot of rage issues. There was a lot of, issues in my house growing up. And I remember probably being not even in third grade because of the house that we were in, and him literally having some kind of meltdown and banging on the wall and being like, I just can't handle it. And my mom trying to calm him down. And I don't remember, it must have been like 6 or 7. I don't remember all the details of what was going on in that moment. But I remember seeing an adult who was out of control, felt overwhelmed by the world. Their response was to kind of rage, right? And being
Mm,
afraid in that moment. And
yeah.
it's so funny because you think about all the things you could remember, that one making such a significant impact. And then years later, being married to somebody who would, rage. And in my mind, think, oh, it's okay. That's normal. This is people who can't handle the world. This is how they react, or this is how, men react. And so
Right.
it's so it makes me so freaked out as a parent to be like, "Oh my gosh, what are all of the things that I exposed my daughter to that she's gonna be talking to therapy about for years and years and years because I did subconsciously or I said subconsciously," and it's interesting with her, she brings this up all the time, and it is like my biggest parenting fail. Apparently, and we just recently talked about this even. Apparently, when she was in like elementary school, she got a C on a health quiz. And I don't remember, but she does, that I like lost my shit that she got a C. And what kind of kid gets a C in
Mm.
health? Now I could see myself saying that, so I don't think she's making it up. And she was like, "Mom, you had me so stressed out that I was going to be a failure in life because I got a C in health." And so and she's like, and it was traumatizing. And after that, like grades, I just never wanted to, school was always an issue. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've destroyed my daughter. Um, and so when we tried to, talk that through, and what came up for me is I said, I couldn't I raised you as a single parent. Wasn't able to give you all the things that I wanted to give you in the, we had to leave our home and then an apartment and all of those things. And so in my mind, being successful in school was a way that she was going to have a better life.
Mm.
And the fear, and this is I think the big thing, which you would appreciate, the fear of if you get a C in health, what is the train wreck that we're headed to in life?
Oh my god. The
Right.
things we worry about, right? Like, at certain times in our life, and then we get to this age that we are right now, and we go, "The heck was I worried about?" Right? Like, what significance was that in my life? But wow,
Yeah, but
health
she
class.
and openly, I, like, vaguely remember this, but this to her was a pivotal defining moment of her childhood at parenting fail on my level, on every level, right? Um, So it's
Yeah.
you're just like, wow, I keep future therapists employed. That is a job as my mom as a mom.
I think the therapist and the life coaching world and self-help is only on the rise because there's so much that people are having to deal with that you just can't deal with alone. Like you actually need help. You need because and the reason we're talking about this, I mean, we are talking about this. We're raised in the environment that we're raised in, and it's like I always talk about it like a bubble, right? So we're like surrounded by particular conversations that are normal, particular conversations that are bad. Like my parents would be like, "Oh, those people with the nice car in the swimming pool, they're in debt. That's bad.
Oh, yes.
Why
Or
we
I
don't have a nice car and a swimming pool, right?" So I went, "Oh, rich
yes.
people are bad. It's not good. That's debt." Like, right? And that's just the conversation that becomes normal. And those are the things we process later through the, all the self-help that we do to go, why can't I be rich? Well, it's because of that imprinting, right? And so these conversations are our reality. And once we start getting exposed to other realities, other people's conversations, some were like, "Ooh, I don't want that one." And others were like, "Yeah, I want that one. That one's great." Getting out of our own reality, we have to look at our blind spots. We have to look at the places that we've made, like for me, rich people wrong, or my body wrong, or, health grades wrong, right? We make these things traumatic. Make these things make us, or they start to create anxiety, and they go like outside of our world because our whole system is trying to keep us safe, right? And so it's always interesting to me what we sort of compartmentalize as safe and not safe, good and right, and bad and wrong, and the edge of our reality. And to unpack that with therapy or life coaching or however you do it is, I think, just the journey that and the evolution that everybody is actually meant to go on in discovering themselves.
I
So
had a lot
it'll
of
be it'll be hers.
yeah, right. Well, so with the they're in debt. I didn't hear that as much as I did hear that sometimes, but I would also hear like, well, you don't really know what goes on in their home. It might look happy on the
Ooh.
outside, but you don't really know what goes on in their home. Now, I will tell you as an adult looking back, I'm like, dude, I know what was going on in my home that was completely toxic and dysfunctional. So I don't know where the judgment is of other people's homes, right? But that very much came like, oh, anybody who has a beautiful house, there must be something bad going on inside. Right. Which on one hand, I can appreciate, right? We look at other people and we become jealous of their life, and you never really know what somebody's going through. You don't know people's, dramas, things like that. But to implant that idea that if you look successful, you clearly have something else going on was a big thing. So I am curious because you work with mostly women, and women who are trying to change their life, right? They're coming to you because they have a desire for something more. They're aware that there's something better than what they're experiencing, and they want to be able to create this shift. Do you find a common theme? Like if you could pinpoint the one thing that seems to be the thing that stops people or holds people back from really having the joy and the happiness and the peace that they're looking for in life.
Yeah, totally. Excuse me. It's the inability to prioritize themselves.
Mm.
They put everybody else first and not themselves, including their joy, their happiness, their sleep, their everything. And what happens is it creates this ongoing putting everybody else first. I work with people on this every single day, right? Is they're always looking outside to go, am I okay? Am I good? Is everybody else taken care of? What do I need to do to keep this life together? And so then what ends up happening is we're deleted, well, kind of deflated, burned out, exhausted, sick. And that's the end result is that bodies get sick when you don't put yourself first. If you're focusing on everybody else's happiness, everybody else's joy, everybody else's, keeping the peace, then where are you in the equation? So you put yourself last. So on an energetic level, we deplete ourselves, but also on the physical level because we're not feeding ourselves, which leads to doing things you don't want to do through obligation. I have to do this because, and when we get into that phase or that sort of mindset, we're like, okay, I have to do this because this person is going to be upset. I have to do this because this person is depending on me. I have to do this because I have a job and I need money, right? Not, I have to do this for me because I need to have joy. Joy is a part of how we actually live a balanced and like life, right? And so much of the time we're putting that on the back burner, which when we start to have people prioritize themselves, women prioritize themselves, it's really hard because they feel guilty. So they've been controlled by this avoidance of guilt, of feeling guilty. Like if I do that, then they're going to feel bad. Or if I say that, then they're going to be happy with me. Instead of looking at how they actually create their life, which is through, well, you're always aligned, right? With whatever your life is like, you're already aligned with that. That's why it's there, right? So there's never any actual misalignment until you say, I want to have happiness. I want to have joy. I want to create that business. And then we start looking at, okay, well, where are you choosing against that? Right? Where is there a misalignment? And then starting to go, okay, well, if I prioritize myself, that's where we actually have to look at stuff. If I prioritize myself, then what's going to fall apart?
So this is interesting because I think this is common for moms, right? Like they're constantly, my kids have to be involved in every sport. My kids have to come first. There's so much guilt of everything has to be for your kids. I know for me, because Emily's going to be leaving for college and it's like, oh, and I've, spent 18 years thinking what's best for her. And it's this strange feeling of like, oh, I can actually think about what I might want. I haven't had that thought in a while, right? So my thought was, okay, that I relate for moms, but you don't work with just moms. You work for all women. You work with all different kinds of women. So it's interesting to me that that's also a struggle for women who aren't parents or maybe either have grown children or they don't have children, that they're still struggling. So when you're saying they're doing for everybody else, who is it that they're doing it for? Is it their spouses, their jobs? Like who are they feeling obligated to?
Any of that, oftentimes parents, especially aging parents. Like I have one client
Okay.
right now, and it was being a caretaker for her aging mother for the last 10 years. Mom passed last year. So now she's
Mm.
free and she's like, I don't even know what I want because I haven't even asked myself that question in so long.
Mm.
So theirs isn't necessarily guilt. It's usually not having clarity about what you want because that's a muscle. It's a muscle to build to go, here's what I want. Because we're not allowed to say what I want. I have to put everybody else first. Right. So we have a lot of women and men too, but a lot of women that are just like, I don't know what I want because I haven't been able to have what I want. So I
Where do
turn
you
that
think
off.
that where do you think that comes from? Like where do you think that starts, the root of that?
Oh, I think for some people it starts in childhood. And then for, you get what you get, right? Like we
Oh,
have,
that saying, you get what you get and you don't get upset.
yeah, that's the one. Like
Yeah.
we have like kids, like I'll just speak to Ben's kids, right? So my stepkids, they very young, divorced parents, right? I came in after, all of that. And they have a schedule and they have to go here and they have to go there. And this is what we do. And they don't have a choice. You have to do what you have to do. And I really see in the two younger ones that it's very hard for them when you ask them the question, hey, what do you want? Oh, I don't know. And maybe
Mm.
that's a kid thing too, but I see other kids going, well, I want that and I want that and I'll have that because of just, I think the way that they were raised and they just didn't have a choice. Like you are doing this and it wasn't forced upon them. It just the way it was. So they just accepted it and became complacent. So you ask the youngest one what he wants. And I'm just like, okay, we kind of started helping you decide, like just pick things, right? Start building that muscle. But it's the exact same for women in their 40s and 50s who have been married, who have raised kids for 18 or 28 years. And they're like, I don't know what I want because the source of desire has always come through somebody else. What do my kids
Mm.
want? What's best for the kids? What has the husband said? What are the limits to my reality? But then once you start building that muscle, holy cow, it's like the true desires start coming out. And then you get into the, well, can I really do that? Can I really follow through for myself on what I really want my life to be like? Right. And you're in this position right now too, right? Of like kids graduating, you got freedom, the freedom to really
Mhm.
choose to craft, deliberately craft your life the way you want to. Right. And we can go as sort of big or small in our thinking about that. Right. Like, how big do you want to think? Like, what do you really want? And then here's a question that I always ask people. So we'll ask you this is, if you were to dream big and say, "Hey, the next phase of my life, this is what I would absolutely love," like, what would that be? And are you willing to allow yourself to have it?
Oh, well, my dream. Yeah. So I have a really simple dream. I say this all the time. I have two. So I want to sit under a palm tree at Christmas time, decorated in Christmas lights, drinking a margarita. Like, I am so sick of living in the cold. I lived in Jersey, I lived in Colorado. I just want to live someplace where I wear flip flops all the time and never see snow. Um, and then I think, but would I leave my daughter to do that? Right? Like,
Exactly.
if
That's
she stays in
exactly
New
it.
Jersey, would I leave her? And then, of course, then I'm like, no, I wouldn't. Right? Like, um, and then and it's funny. So there's this movie with, and I always joke about this movie. It's with Catherine O'Hare, who I absolutely love. She was the mom on Schitt's Creek, and
Yeah.
she's in this movie with Ashton Kutcher and like Katherine Heigl or something. And he's like this undercover CIA, and the movie is about him, Ashton Kutcher, and Katherine Heigl. But Catherine O'Hare plays the supporting role of the mom, and she's married to, I think, Tom Selleck. And Tom Selleck's also in the CIA. So it has to do with all of this. But her entire role in the movie, legit, every single scene, she's got a drink in her hand. She's just happy. She's just going along with whatever the chaos is of the movie, doesn't really know what's happening, but she's got this great marriage, right? She's close with her daughter, and she's just living life happy, slightly buzzed. And I joke all the time to Jack, I'm like, that is my goal in life, which I could feel a lot of judgment saying that out loud, but I think that having gone through so much where life felt like a battle to
Mhm.
protect my daughter, to get through this, I'm like, I just want to get to a place where I'm just kind of oblivious and happy. And Em said to me the other day, because she's gone through, we've been talking about this, some pretty tough stuff. And she said, Mom, no offense, but you're not really like an empathetic, warm, nurturing kind of person. She's like, so when things happen, like sometimes I just want you to hug me and not, and so I said to her, I said, you didn't notice when you were at the table and you were crying and I went over to hug you? That's who I was trying to be. And she literally was like, I had no idea that's who you were trying to be, because that's so not who you are. And so we had a conversation. It's kind of cool to talk to her now that she's older. She's very insightful. She's very
Yeah.
wise. She's still very mature in a lot of ways, but she's very wise in some ways. And I said to her, I said, Em, I don't know, maybe if, you know, we hadn't gone through the domestic violence divorce and you hadn't had cancer and then you hadn't had another life-threatening illness, maybe I would have had the luxury to be more nurturing and more warm and snuggly. I said, but I feel like I've spent your entire life being on like your protector and having to keep your safety and fight for you. And that was really, I said, I felt like I spent my entire life having to fight. And I'm like, and you can't be warm and
Mhm.
cuddly when you have to fight. And I said, so maybe God didn't give you the mom that you would have wanted, but he gave you the one that you needed. Right.
Oh, I got full
And
body chills on that,
yeah.
100%,
And so I said,
100%.
I hope that, you can appreciate that. And then I also hope that maybe now that like that is over and you're becoming an adult, I don't need to do that for you anymore. Right.
Mhm.
And so I can step into a more nurturing role for you. But it's
Yeah.
interesting to be able to say, and to hear her and to hear her and to hear like, this is sometimes what I just need. Right.
Mhm.
And you do wonder, like, well, what would have, I try to think back, before all that happened when she was a baby, was I more nurturing? Was I a little bit less, on defense all the time? I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously very type A, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting the different perspectives. And sometimes I'm like, this is why you need more than one child, so that you can be like, okay, look at all the things I messed up. Give me a do-over. Let me have another one. I'd like another one. Let me redo this. Yeah.
Reset. Like, I
Yeah,
remember the Nintendo
exactly.
game. Did you ever have a Nintendo where you click the button and it just starts the game over?
Oh, that'd be
Man,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah,
There's a great quote. I
start
say this
over.
to her all the time. I go, and it's not my quote, but I heard from somebody else. I tell her, I say, Emily, you make it very difficult sometimes for me to be the parent that I always imagined I would be.
That's their job,
You
though.
know?
That's
Yeah.
their job.
Of like, and you know what? I always joke too. I say, she's not who I am, and she doesn't care about her C. Um, but I can't imagine if there was like another one that was like me. I think poor Jack, he would, keel over. But she really has, I guess, what you teach women to be open to just that things go your way, open to that flow of energy. She naturally has. It's so
Mhm.
fascinating. She was late for her doctor's appointment yesterday, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes late. And I'm driving there like a maniac because if we miss the appointment, it's like 3 months to get another one. And she's going to be off at college. And I'm all upset with her. And she's like, Mom, you're just so stressed and it'll be fine. And she goes, you wait at the doctor's office all the time. That's because everybody else is late too. Why should I be the one who has to be on time? Nobody's ever on time. We're going to sit there and wait anybody. And I'm like, Emily, we could get there and they could cancel the appointment. And as I'm like hysterically getting like, we're late and you can't get on time for anything. And this is important. And if you're not 10 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late, right? The phone rings in the car. I pick it up on speakerphone, which I will never do again. And it's the doctor. And she's like, hi, where are you? The office. And she's like, I'm like, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. She goes, well, the doctor's running late. So your appointment's going to be pushed back 40 minutes. If you want to maybe go get lunch before you get here, it's fine. And I was like,
Yep.
okay. And I shut the button off. And Emily looks at me with a grin. And she's like, see, I told you everything works out for me.
Ta-da!
Yep. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
But
and you know why that
that is
is?
her
Do you know why
life.
that is?
Everything works out for her
Do you know why the science of that?
because she expects it.
Yeah, but in terms of like the brain science, like we have the reticular activating system, right? So the reticular activating system in our brain filters the millions of bits of information that are available to us at any one time. It filters it to what is important to us, right? So whatever we focus on, we will filter through that information. And we see that when we say, oh, I want a red Mercedes Benz. And then, or, with you, Mary Kay, you see the pink
Mhm.
Cadillacs, right? You're like, oh, a pink Cadillac, right? And then you start seeing pink Cadillacs. So it starts putting on the radar for that information. And so basically, for when you believe that everything is always working out for you, then, or working for you, then your mind, your reticular activating system is filtering through all the information, going, okay, this matches that, because it's always looking for patterns. It's always looking for matches, right? And so then that's what starts to correlate into this, our relationship with our realities is things that line up that way. And then we always get evidence, just like with what you said. Oh, of course. Yeah, of course that happened, because everything's always working out for me, right? Everything is always working from my perspective. And that happens in, the relationships, like, oh man, I've had so many bad relationships. Like, okay, great. Then you're going to get another one, because you're going to filter through all the guys and you're going to find the one that's going to match that same perspective, right? And then that's why we keep creating patterns. So good on Em. I'm so excited for
Yeah.
her.
I don't know where that came from because that's something I would love. Like with the work that we've done together, I know that's the ideal, right? The ideal is that you show up in the universe and say, I only expect good things are happening to me. I only expect great things to happen. And I don't know how she got that. And I love that she has it. It drives me a little bit crazy, but she really is like, nah. And she's just chill. I have no where my genetics are, I have no idea because she's just chill. Everything works out. Mom, you're freaking out over nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think well, I'll tell you what, my mom was very much like what you're talking about, more high, I would just call it
High
anxious,
strung. Let's just say it what
high
it is.
strung, like really worried about things, and then would like project a lot of that onto me of like, oh, you need to do this and that. So then I just became the opposite, right? And so
Maybe
I
that's
wonder,
why she's that way. Yeah.
it's like for my mom, like I was always like, why are you stressing out about this? Like, I just don't understand. Like, I didn't get it. So it didn't make sense to me. So I didn't duplicate it. I went, well, I see things from a different perspective. And this looks like more fun, more enjoyable, easier. And my big thing is easier. Like I love creating shortcuts. I like the easier pathway. Now, I'm willing to do hard work and stuff like that, but I don't need it to take extra steps when it doesn't have to. So I'm like, well, why are you worrying about that when we don't like that doesn't make any sense. Like we don't need to add worry to that because hers is worry. Like she's always, what am I going to do when you move to Australia? I'm just going to worry about you all the time. Like why? Why? Why would you do that? Just call me and see how I am. Like why
Yeah.
worry?
Well, and my thing would be is how are you going to move to Australia? I don't want to move to Australia.
You
You
watch.
can't.
Emma's gonna move. She's gonna be like, I'm going somewhere, and you're gonna like, oh no, now I can actually go do my dream.
Yeah, I would be like, wait, where are we moving to? She's
Isn't that
very
funny?
much like you, though. She's very, why are you stressing about this? And it'll all work out. She's also
It always
very
does though,
gray.
right?
Well, she's very gray. She can see a lot of gray. She can see lots of different within people, within relationships. I am a very black and white. It is right and it is wrong. And that it's interesting because that makes life more difficult because there's a high level of judgment, right? This is right and this is wrong. I do remember when I was going through my divorce though, and they put in Colorado, the way it works is you have to go to therapy. Like if you are the victim of a domestic violence, they set you up with therapy and all of that. And she said, usually this makes life very difficult for people if you can't see any gray because you're so in your right, wrong, and judgment. She said, in your case, it's actually served you in this particular instance because most women, it takes them like 8 times to leave an abusive situation. And mine was like basically the first time because it was very clear. It was right and it was wrong. Right.
Right.
And so that served me well in that situation. But it's been more challenging in other situations where she's very like, well, you have to be able to see all the gray and see all the exceptions. And I'm just like, so I don't know. Maybe it is a complete pushback on who I am that she's like, I'm not going to worry about it.
Well, and I
So
think we get the kids that we need. Just like she got the parent she needed from you, and you're getting the kid that you need.
hopefully, I don't know. Oh yeah, that's wild. I'm like,
Well,
we'll
I would
see how
love
you
to
are as
see
a parent.
you. I would love to see you having Christmas on a beach with a margarita, warm
Yeah.
weather. That's why I moved from Colorado. That's what I wanted. And one of the reasons I didn't leave for so long was because my family was there. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, do I really need to go somewhere else? But my heart was really somewhere where the ocean was. And when I decided, I was like, okay, there's really nothing to lose here. I'm just gonna go to San Diego. Then it was one of the best choices I ever made. Changed my whole life. Changed the whole trajectory. And one of the questions I asked was, if I go, then what's my life going to be like in 5 years? And I
Mm.
literally was like fireworks were going off in my world, like telling me, yes, go. Whatever is holding you back, you don't need to hold back for that anymore. And 5 years later, I was living in Australia.
So how did that happen? Because we met in Colorado, and then all of a sudden you took off to San Diego, and then all of a sudden you were in a different country. But you
Yeah.
had gone. I think you had said you went on vacation there and just like never
Yeah.
left or something.
Yeah, I had gotten out of a toxic relationship where I was engaged, and I was like, okay, I am powerful, independent. I am very intuitive. I'm very good at what I do. I'm about to write a book. I've got all this stuff going for me. How did I get into this toxic relationship with this guy? And when I was done, I was like, okay, I got to get myself straight. Like, this can't happen again. Because it was a pattern that I was having the same relationship over and over, different guys. So I went, all right, I want to make my life, like, turn my life around. So, and, I love asking the questions that create, the next steps for me in the alignment that I am stepping into and whatever it is. I said, what can I choose that would make my life better than I can even imagine? And the first thing I thought was go, because I love Australia. So go to Australia, like on an extended holiday. And first I was thinking like a couple of weeks. I was like, ooh, that's a lot. And then as time went on, it was like, no, 4 weeks. And then it was like 6 weeks. So I booked in for 6 weeks and I came down. I was like, this is the best place in the world. I love it so much here.
Mhm.
And I was already asking, it was multifaceted because I was already asking, like, the elections were happening that year. So the 2016. And I was starting to have visions of the way the United States was going to be. And I went, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. And I just had some visions and some awareness. And I went, all right, what would it take to be able to live in another country? Because I had literally had no idea. I just asked the question. I said, what would it take? Let it go. Didn't think twice about it. Didn't do any research. Went on my holiday. A couple weeks in, I got to the Sunshine Coast, which is in Queensland, with the most beautiful beach called Alexander Heads Beach. And I was standing on the beach barefoot the first morning that I was there. And I was just like, this is the most amazing thing. Like, my life
Wait,
is
and
so
you just went
good.
by
Like,
yourself? Like, you just
yeah,
what
I
did you
went.
book, like, a hotel and go by yourself?
Yeah, I had business things to do, and I was in a class, and I was doing a class, and so there was things happening, and I knew a bunch of people in Australia too, so I wasn't
Okay.
like all alone. But I was all alone that day. Um, Very much just having my eat, pray, love, holiday that changes your whole freaking life. I All of a sudden my body started like vibrating. Like when you get electrocuted a little bit, and you're like, it was like that. And I was like, whoa, that's what's happening. And then I heard this voice like, you're home. It said, you're home. And
Huh.
I looked up to my right and I went, okay, make it super easy for me to get here. Because I'm like that, right? And I sort of went, okay, like whatever that just was. And that day I was on Tinder because I was looking for somebody to sort of show me around and to hang out with while I was on the coast. And I met Ben. 2 days later, we met in person and just really connected. Went home a few weeks later. And 2 weeks after I got home, somebody messaged me and said, hey, I think that if you're looking to move to Australia, because I had talked to a couple people about it, I said, oh, I wonder what it would take because I literally have no idea. They said, we can help you get a visa. And I went, oh. So I talked to the woman. We figured out a way. And then I decided in that moment, I'm moving.
Mm.
And 6 weeks later, I moved. It was on the week of Thanksgiving, 2016. And everything happened for me. Everything. I had 2 more years on my lease of my car. Somebody took it over. I got out of the lease in my house that I was renting. Somebody came and stayed with me and did all the organization to have the estate sale to sell everything. Like my mom came to visit, my dad came to visit. I had 5 live classes that I was facilitating in those 6 weeks. All happened seamlessly. Got on that plane with 4 suitcases. Didn't know.
Wow.
I just had a place to land and that was it, and I had been, but even then, it was just a connection that we had. I wasn't like, "This is the love of my life." I was like, I need to go. Like, I need to
Mm.
go." And then here I am, literally 8 years later, like right now, it's 8 years.
Wow.
Um, and here I am, Ben and I are still together.
So did you put stuff in storage, or did you literally just get rid of everything and take your 4 suitcases?
Well, I got rid of almost everything, and then there was a number of things that I wanted, like my bed set I loved, and a few key furniture pieces that I didn't want to get rid of yet. Oh, I had my dog too. I had just
I
gotten my dog
remember.
like, well, it was 11 months before, and somebody took him for like a year before I decided I was staying, which was so grateful he could come. Um, so I actually put it on Facebook. I said, "Hey, I've got a bunch of furniture. I'm going to leave. Can anybody store this for me?" Because what I thought had this random thought, and this is where like those random thoughts, and we've talked about this so many times of like, what's that first sort of awareness that seems like crazy? So I put it on Facebook, and this woman, this acquaintance of mine, said, "We're moving into a new place at the perfect time. I would love to home your stuff and use it." And so that's what happened. They came. I had already moved. I was actually on a trip. They came over, packed it all up, took it for a year. And then at the perfect time, I said, okay, I'm staying in Australia. I got movers to come and get it and ship it here.
You shipped your bedroom furniture to Australia?
Oh yeah. Bedroom
Wow.
furniture, some other key pieces that I just really loved, and yeah.
That's wild. I would have thought it would just been cheaper to buy new bedroom furniture.
Um, you know, a friend of mine's gonna be like, she's selling all her stuff right now, and I said, keep the things are that you're gonna need in a couple of years when this is done. Don't sell them for cheap, because just put them in storage or find a friend's house with a few boxes. You can just leave them there. I wish I would have kept my blender. I wish I would have kept some random stuff, because by the time I rebought everything, it was a higher price. But also, like in Australia, things are a little different. So I wish there was a few things I wish I would have had,
Interesting.
and had the forethought to go, I might actually need this later. I just thought, oh, let's get rid of it all. So
Yeah, when I moved 2 years ago, I was in this kind of panic. We decided last minute to move, and I had to get out of my lease, and I was just in a panic to clean out this apartment that I had lived in for 10 years, which an apartment you think is kind of small, but it was a 3 bedroom. It had an attic. Like, it was a small size of a small house.
yeah.
And the one thing I really regret was I had stacks and stacks, some of your stuff actually from stuff I had done with
Really?
you of notebooks, when we did that retreat in New York, and all of these
Yeah.
notes and all of these books. And I mean, and when I'm talking like an entire black garbage bag full. And it was in a moment of, I have so much stuff. I'm never going to look at these books again. And I threw them all out. And that is the only thing I really regret, because it had 26 years of investment of classes and workshops and coaching and stuff that I had accumulated. Um, but then I kind of, had a pity party after a little while of like, I can't believe I threw this out. What was I thinking? And then I thought, well, I guess I wasn't meant to have that stuff. I guess that stuff was part of the old past, and I wasn't meant to bring it into my new future. And I'm supposed to create new stuff now. And I just had to kind of come from that standpoint. But I do think you get into this, like, I'm moving, I have to get rid of everything. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that's the only thing. There was stuff that was difficult to get rid of. Like, I loved my um, living room couch and stuff that we just didn't have space for. But that was really the only thing, because I thought, why did I throw out my brain? Like 26 years of my brain that you just tossed.
Well, and
So
everything has, well, my belief is everything has consciousness. So, and then we have emotional connections to the consciousness of the past and the memories and stuff. And so when we do these big purges, we're really freeing ourselves, right? And freeing ourselves to receive more, to shift things, to let go, or even to remember, right? In certain ways. And so, like, when I let a whole house of stuff go with 4 suitcases, it was like a huge release of an old identity who would never just pack everything, sell everything and pack up and actually just leave the country with no knowing of if I was going to stay or not or whatever. Like, I had no idea when I left for Australia.
mm.
I just
So
knew
what
that
do
I
you
had a
think?
visa that I could stay for at least another like 6 months, and that's all I needed.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what do you think has been the biggest surprise for you that you would have not expected when you made the decision to change your country?
Oh, wow, that's such a good question. I am every like 3 months or so, I am in awe that Ben and I are together. Like,
Hmm.
in terms of, I never had a long relationship. Like, my longest relationship when I was like 17 to 20. And so my relationships were so transient
Mm.
because I got into this pattern that I found somebody that actually helped me heal that pattern, right? And heal my nervous system with the trauma bonding that was happening and the anxiety that was happening and the all of everything that was happening, and that we're still creating this life together literally 8 years later. I'm like, wow, our anniversary is in a couple of weeks, and we're like,
Aw.
it's been I think, oh, it's been 8 years. Like, wow. Like, I'm just like in awe of it, going, wow, 8 years and we're still happy. And we really like each other. We really get along. Like life, like creation of life is really good. And we continue to grow together. And that was one of the things with all of my other relationships is I was always a growth person. I want to evolve and grow. And the other person never really seemed to be in that same space.
Hmm.
So with who he continues to show up to be and who I continue to show up to be just really is it's like goes together.
Yeah, well, you remember, I mean, after my divorce, I had like a string of just terrible relationships that left me like brokenhearted one after another. And
Mm.
after the worst one, when I moved back to New Jersey and I was with somebody and really thought this is it, this is the person, this is love, like after everything I've been through, this is the person I'm meant to be with. And he literally walked out on me and Emily. It was devastating. She was devastated. I was devastated. I think I was probably on my bathroom floor for about 3 months. Um, and I remember after that, I did not date. I gave myself a year initially, and it turned into, I think, 18 months because the thought I had was, what, why do I keep attracting these people who break my heart? What do
Mm.
they have in common? And I couldn't figure out because I had dated a string of alcoholics, which was interesting because I didn't meet them at bars. That was the other thing that was crazy. Like I met one of them at a networking event. I met one of them because he rented office space and where I had an office. So it wasn't like, okay, well, you're out meeting people at bars. What do you expect? Right. These are people I could meet randomly. At one point, I used to joke, I'd be like, if I was in the grocery store, whoever I was attracted to, I could pretty much guarantee was going to be an alcoholic. Like, I don't know what that was about. And this guy he wasn't an alcoholic. And I was like, what does he have in common with the rest of them? Right. And I remember I had this aha moment. It was like heavens opened up. God came down onto my head and was like, they all have low self worth.
Mhm.
And, and I remember thinking, well, you attract what you are, not what you want.
Yep.
So I must have some low self worth. And I think I didn't even realize that from my divorce. Right. And I thought, if I continue to date, I'm going to continue to attract these people. I need to focus on me so I don't feel like I'm not quote good enough. Like it wasn't even a conscious thing, right? But I had to be aware of like this is what I'm attracting. So if this is what they all have in common, that's got to be what I'm sending out. And it was
Yeah.
like I remember a year and being like, okay, I'm going to give myself a year. And then at the end of the year, I was like, I'm still not ready. But it was also fascinating because,
Mhm.
I was, I think 30, 35, 36. And I would go out and people would say, oh, are you dating anybody? And I would say, oh, no, I'm not. I'm just staying single for a while. And people would be like, oh, don't worry, honey. You'll meet somebody. Oh, don't worry. The right guy will come along. It was almost like there was something pathetic and wrong about the fact that I wanted to take this time to just focus on me. And I remember thinking, again, if I was a man and I was 36 or 37 and I was like, you know what, I'm just really focused on me and my career right now and like getting my life together, that would have been praised. Nobody would have been like, oh, don't worry, the right woman will come around for you. They would have been like, it's great that you're focusing on you and your career, at like, right? And I thought this is so fascinating that as a woman, it's don't worry. You'll be okay. Eventually the right guy will show up. I just thought it was so interesting to me that that was the messaging I got over and over and over.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it
Yeah.
was really fascinating. And then I don't think I ever told you this was wild. What broke the pattern of singleness is I walked into a Starbucks and there was this guy sitting there. And I was literally like, do I know him? And I'm in my hometown. So my thought was maybe I knew him from like high school, but I couldn't place who he was.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what are my Starbucks? And I keep looking back and I'm thinking, this is like this hot guy. I think I know him. Right. And he kept looking at me and I kept looking at him. And as I leave, I was like, I'm sorry, do I know you? And he goes, no, but I kind of feel like I think I know you. We actually did not know each other,
Uh-huh.
but had this weird energetic connection. I sat there, we ended up talking for like 6 hours in a Starbucks.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it was wild, and then we were like, "We should probably, like, try to meet up again," and he was visiting from Florida, so he didn't even live there, so it wasn't somebody that I knew, but I remember thinking, "This is, like, the first person that I feel like I have a better connection with than the other person I had broken up with."
Mm.
Um, And nothing ever never came from that. He was not somebody who was aligned with what I was looking for or whatnot. But I always thought it was very interesting that there was some kind of weird connection. I don't know if it was from a previous life or different energy, but it was almost like I needed that person. Because he said too, he goes, I do feel like I know you. This is weird. But it was whatever he was put in my path to be like, okay, it's okay for you to start dating again. It was a really weird thing. But I will say too, because I'm in now probably the one of two of the healthiest relationships I've ever had in my life. I think I don't know if we talked about this. It didn't feel normal.
Right.
And when we first met, after a couple, like probably about 2 or 3 months, I was like, yeah, I don't think this is the guy for me. And my sister-in-law was like, what is wrong with you? Because of what we're talking about, the
Yeah.
energy, right? Like that doesn't feel like I was like, oh, it doesn't feel exciting. And really what that was is it doesn't feel volatile, right?
Yep.
Like it's so interesting what you're attracted to. And then having
Yeah.
to be like, this is okay. This is not supposed to be volatile.
Oh man, when you're coming out of traumatic, volatile relationships, for me, it was like 6 months in, I was bored. I was like, I feel this is bored.
Mhm.
And then what the heck? This is like the healthiest relationship I've ever had. Why do I feel bored? And I went, oh, I'm not anxious because I'm not thinking he's cheating, or I'm not worried about him, being on other dating apps, because that was like the pattern that I kept having. So it was like, I'm not also trying to save him or fix him. We're
Mm.
actually there's a calmness, and I was like, "Oh my god, I gotta get used to this. I gotta get used to this because this is how it should be. This is what I want my new normal to be." But I wanted to add too, I just wrote this down here, that because of low self-worth, right? If somebody has low self-worth, they're typically exhibiting one of two behaviors. One is victim, right? They're being a victim, they're complaining, like everybody's against them, or it's stuff like that of like, oh, poor me sort of stuff. But then it attracts the savior, the fixer, who is the overgiver, who is like, I can come and help you. And that's what my big awareness was that shifted everything was, and this is what happens is when we meet somebody, we make a decision about them. And that decision leads to our role with them. And if it's a romantic relationship, right, then like in my example, where I really saw this loud and clear was I met the last guy, and in that first meeting, I was like, oh, he's checking off the boxes. He's good looking. He's this. He's that. He seems nice. And how do you know in a meeting for a first
Right.
person? I feel that connection. Like I feel like we already know each other, which is actually a lot of times a red flag. Um, when you've had toxic relationships. But he started talking about his, well, it was wife at the time, which also is a red flag, his wife at the time, and how she did this bad thing. And I went, here's the thing. I decided she's bad. How could anybody ever do that to him? I would never do that to you. I will be better and I will help you with this.
Mm.
Boom. Hook, line, sinker. You're locked into that subconsciously. And now that's the role that you have, victim, savior. And when I unlocked that for myself, I was like, holy moly. That's what I've done with everybody is I've come in to be the savior, the fixer, and then I overgive. I jump into their world. I don't want to disrupt them. Now I'm a people pleaser, and then I'm putting them first. And where am I in the equation? Because if I do anything, then they might leave, because I'm actually here to help them. And then what that did for me was overlook bad behavior. Right. So then there was
Mm.
certain behavior that I would like just continued red flags were flagging. And I was like, that's not that bad. I can help them with that.
Do you know what your Enneagram is? Do you ever do that?
I don't remember.
No, it's a number, so it's a 1 through 9. I love the Enneagram. I think it's like one of my favorite personality style quizzes.
Yeah, I
I know
don't remember.
you're really into the human design. I love the Enneagram. Sounds
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But with like people in that situation, it's like when we've got a pattern, if we look at, what did you decide? And what is the story, and then what is the role that you're in? You can find out why you're in a role, like why you're doing that pattern, with anybody, with the friends, right? With so many women have issues with other women. Like, oh, it's just so, it was so much freedom to be able to go, oh, I don't actually have to do that.
Hmm.
I don't
So
actually have
interesting.
to be in that role with that person. And so when it got boring with Ben, that's when I said, oh, I'm not trying to do all these things. It's calm. It's actually healing my nervous system. This is something that I actually want in my life. Life changing.
Hmm. And I
Completely life
think
changing.
sometimes, well, what in the past and when I've had that is that then you almost look to create drama. You look to create the excitement, things like that, right? And then you're like, well, of course, it becomes self-fulfilling, right? Of course it didn't work out. Look exactly what I created. Um,
Yeah.
it's so fascinating how much so much of what we do we're not aware of. And so I do want to I know we've been talking for a while. I want to wrap up and share with people listening. So, one, if you're listening, I'd love to hear number one, what was your defining moment in your
Mhm.
life? Can you think of like what is something from your childhood that really defines who you are? I would love to hear that in the comments. And also, what are you not choosing? You know, when I'm talking about, oh, I'd love to live in Florida, I'd love to live in the heat, I'd love to be in sunshine all the time. And I know why I'm not choosing that. I don't want to leave my daughter. I don't want to leave the healthiest relationship I've had, right? And so there's this conflict there. So, what is it that you're not choosing that if you did choose would potentially change your life? So, we'd love to hear that in the
Mhm.
comments. One of the things that you do and the work that you do that was very transformative for me is that I kind of grew up in the personal development world, right? And in mindset work and all of that. But it was always about affirmations. It was always about stating what you wanted as if it was, yeah, if you had it, right?
Mhm.
And claiming it already. And what was a little bit different about the work that you do was not necessarily having the answer, but asking the question.
Mhm.
And that was a very different approach for me that I find actually way more I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but powerful is not the word that I'm looking for, but that to me
Yeah.
actually opens up a space where I start to see things change. So, for
Mhm.
example, if I come in and I say, okay, I live in Florida and I live under my palm tree and I'm claiming this and all of that, I get stuck. But when I do the work that you've taught me to do, which is ask the question of like, well, what would it take for me to just not even have to say that it's Florida, but what would it take for me to just live someplace where I really love and I was in sunshine all the time? There's a lightness, there's an openness, an
Mhm.
expansiveness that you feel, and not having to know the answer, but just being aware of what will come up. I think you actually start to come up with better ideas than what you initially had, right? And that's what I really
100%.
love about the work that you do. You always come up with these really great questions to give people that they can ask themselves, sit with them, and kind of let their subconscious go to work and figure it
Yeah.
out, right? Where so many times you're told, well, you have to figure out what you want and then work backwards. And you come from a completely different approach that is it's incredible. I mean, I know you talk a lot about magic and that you create magic, but it's kind of like this magical and one thing if you that you'll know if you ever hang out with Corey and I. So I'm a Christian. I come from a very Christian background and you're not, but we actually have so much of an alignment because from a biblical standpoint, it's that, you speak what you speak. God spoke creation into the world and everything was created by what God spoke and that we're made in that image. And so what we speak and what we say creates around us, right?
Mhm.
And that there's this whole supernatural world around us that's working that we don't even see. And so I
Yeah.
think when you ask these questions, you start to tap into that. And I know you have a gift for our listeners, and this is why I'm kind of leading into this because this is the work that you do that changes people's lives. I mean, you really, and we didn't dive too much into the story with us, but it was in a season in my life when, my daughter and I, our literal lives were in danger through my domestic violence divorce and through a series of events that were so supernatural. I ended up going to a course that you were teaching that you had actually gifted me and it was a wild experience. And within 24 hours of that, our entire life changed. And I think it really changed the trajectory of my life, of my daughter's life. My daughter was finally safe in a safer place. You are single handedly one of the most impactful humans in my life. And for those of you who don't know, Corey and I literally met at a networking event where there were a bunch of kind of jerky guys throwing business cards around and we were the only ones that connected. But I believe it was a divine appointment that God aligned me with you because of the impact you were going to have later on in my life and have continued to have. Like, I am so overwhelmingly grateful for your friendship and who you are, and that you have been willing to step out and do the hard work for yourself, that you've put yourself in a place where now you empower someone like me to be able to do that. And so I just so appreciate the gift that you are to the world. And so I really want everybody who's listening to be able to get your offer that we're going to have in our show notes. We'll have it under the video if you're here on YouTube, but I just cannot encourage you enough to grab this, because you want to get into Cory's world, wherever she is, wherever you can hear her speak. Any single time I've gotten into your space, things have shifted in my life. And so that's what I want for anybody who's listening to this, to have that same powerful experience with you.
Oh, I remember.
So tell us what you're giving.
Well, I have to say first, I remember that class, and we actually had a pretty intense conversation afterwards where you were telling me what was going on. And the message that you sent me, I remember getting it, and I was like, it was late at night, I think, too, and you telling me what was happening, and I was like, holy moly, that everything just changed. I could feel it in your world, and that's the power of just shifting, just opening to, hey, well, what else is available for us here? Right? Because we get so much on, this is the only way, this is what has to happen, this is what I want. And we go, wait a second, what else is available? And that's really the shift that was made that day, that in my memory, at least, if there was just an opening to, what if there was another way to be? What if there was another possibility here? And then boom, the doorway was already available that just went, oh, we want this one instead. Here we go. Ding, ding, ding.
Yep.
There you go. You're going to go down this timeline now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to change it. It was like, it changed the timeline. I was in a season in my life where I was in the middle of my domestic violence divorce. I was being threatened on a regular life that I was going to get killed. My daughter was in an unsafe situation. I felt like the courts were failing us. Child protection services were failing us. And literally within that day. And what was interesting is that you had the class, and I didn't go because there was a snowstorm. And then you had the class again, and you said, well, you can come to the next one. And I said, well, I can't. I teach Saturday morning. I run a big event. There's always tons of people. I'm sorry, I can't go. And that morning, and it has never happened before or since, but that morning, every single RSVP for that class canceled. And I remember calling you and saying, well, every single person canceled. I guess maybe I can come. And so that's where, and so when I look at it, I go, wow, there was such a supernatural force behind what was happening. But I also think it's because you do the work that opens up the space for that to happen for the rest of us.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Everything's working for you.
Don't you guys love that? Don't you just want to live with that mindset of everything is working for you?
It is. Even the patterns, even the crappy stuff that shows up, it's working for you, because it's giving you another chance to look at things differently. It's giving you another chance. And until you do, it's going to keep showing up. And so I look at everything, even the really crappy stuff, it's actually working for you. And in that moment, you're getting a piece of how you function in the world, in the universe, that you needed in that moment, that gave you a whole nother opportunity, a whole nother timeline.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that because it was such a powerful experience for me as well, to go, holy cow, this is crazy. This is like, oh my God, this is the magic. And when I talk about the magic, it's not like this crazy woo-woo thing. It's actually the things that show up based on who you're being and how you're functioning. And it's always like surprise and delight, like, oh, that's nice. I'll have some more of that. So with regard to my offer, freebie, gift, thank you. It's called 8-Minute Magic, and it's an 8-minute practice that you can do in the morning or the evening that helps you align your energy, and especially for women, but men as well. Claim your energy back from everywhere that you've been putting it everywhere else. Give it to yourself, and how to sort of flow your focus, your attention, and your perspective on how you want to experience your life, your day, your week, and moving your energy that way. What we see people saying about using this practice is that, number one, is really simple, people use it for years because it actually helps them focus, because so many people wake up in the morning and they're stressed. They're thinking about their to-do list. They're wondering what's going to happen. They're worried about money or whatever. And all of that is a distraction because you're not consciously consciously creating like where your energy is flowing. You're in the past, you're in yesterday. Right. So when we can wake up in the morning, first thing in the morning, and claim all of our energy back, where do we want to focus our energy? You literally will start your life, you'll witness your life start to change just by doing that. So I wanted to gift it to everybody. We'll just put the code below, mostly because I don't remember what it is right now.
Yep, that's okay. We'll get everything in guys. It'll be in the notes. It'll be below in the video. You'll be able to have access to everything, and we'll put all of your where to find you, your website, all that kind of stuff here too. But please go and grab that because it is a very simple practice. I think I if it's what I'm remembering, I have it. It's a very simple practice, but it just completely shifts your alignment. And in today's world, particularly within social media and inboxes, and I was reading something about the average person gets like 138 emails a day or something crazy like that. I mean, we are just in flux of people trying to get our attention. And this is something I'm personally struggling with, is there is so much noise. And when there's so much noise, it's really difficult to sit in the, what do I want? How do I want to be? Not looking at the comparison, and to be in a place where we can create the life that we want. And so that was what this will give you. It will give you the place to get rid of the noise and the distraction. So thank you guys for hanging out. If you hung out with us this entire time, you really made it through a long episode. So thank you. If you enjoyed the conversation, then of course would love you to subscribe. If you would love to leave a review, we'd love to hear that. If it's a great review. If not, it's okay. You don't need to leave a review. But next time, we would love for you to join us because I will have another interesting person for another completely irrelevant conversation. And why do we do all this? Because life really is worth laughing at. So have a great day, everybody.
Bye.